And I know he has some questions for the government. Let me invite Mr. Andre Worrell. Good night, sir.
Hello, good night, Marcia, and good night to the viewers of the show. You did make a very good point. We need to speak up, we need to be heard. And sometimes it seems as though we are not talking up enough and that we keep things to ourselves and believe that by some way it will work itself out. And just to link the show together, that is also happening when we look at the way how is happening within the country, and then also the plans that the government has in order to make access to citizenship in the country much easier. And if we don't speak out, we may realize that we lose everything that we have, because I think that right now Barbadians are the ones who are possibly being disadvantaged by the whole migration process, and will be further disadvantaged if the government is allowed to change the requirements for citizenship in Barbados to how they plan to make it much easier for persons to be granted citizenship.
Most definitely. And I was saying to them at the beginning of the show that I have been receiving reports, and we are still doing our research. And I promised those young people that we on this show, we will stand with them. We will stand with them. Where I don't want to say too much, but it's along the same lines of what's happening. They're being marginalized, Barbadians, by foreigners. And I'm using that word, I'm specifically using that word. I'm using it for emphasis. And that's what's happening in this country. But over to you, Andre.
Right. And I thought that all that is happening is important for us to look at the topic economic growth or job displacement, the migrant labor debate, because many of the arguments that the government is using to encourage persons to come to Barbados is because they say that there's a labor shortage and we don't have skilled workers to fit into certain areas. And they're also hoping by increasing the population size, we have a low birth rate, by increasing the population size and inviting more workers to come to the country, that it would also help to spur on the economic growth of the country. But I think that we need to ask some questions. Um, is there genuine evidence of a labor shortage, or are migrants filling jobs that locals would otherwise take? Because you're noticing that a number of the jobs being taken by the migrants are the entry level jobs for normally our young people. And many of our young people are complaining that they can't find a job. And when you travel across the country, we have a construction boom, but not many Barbadians are employed on those construction sites. Yet, so you have blocks that are filled with people. You have neighborhoods with young people who say they can't get a job. You have hotels being open, and you have a number of young Barbadians saying that they applied, but or maybe they're called for an interview and they're still not getting jobs at these hotels. And then in terms of the hotel work, it's very seasonal, so you may be good between December and April, but between May and August, you may be struggling. May, August, September, October, you may be struggling for employment. So do we really have um, a labor shortage or that high demand of jobs in the workforce that we really need an influx of persons coming into the country? And something that I find rather interesting, I don't know if you have the video that you can share. Now, we've been seeing quite a few promotions um, promoting Barbados and encouraging people to take a trip to Barbados. We thought that these persons would be coming to Barbados for a holiday, but we are seeing in majority of the promotions, it seems as though it is more than a holiday. It is a long-term stay that is being promoted. One of those videos I watched, there was a comparison between the Barbados dollar and the US dollar and how strong the dollar was. And comparing the value of the Barbados dollar to the local currency in the country of the influencer, and basically saying you might as well come here and get this Barbados dollar because you have more spending power back in your country. All of these, so now you have persons that are supposed to be coming for holidays, coming for jobs. And this has nothing to do with our welcome stamp program. I don't know if you're going to show the video. You can go ahead if persons have not seen the video, and then we can talk about it.
So I made a video comparing Barbados dollars to United States dollars, that every 2 Barbados dollars equals to 1 United States dollars, meaning 100 Barbados dollars equals to 50 United States dollars. In my country, 100 Barbados dollars equals to 75,000 naira. And somebody said that is not how to rate value of a currency, that I have to check the minimum wage first. My brother, I'm sorry to disappoint you. Minimum wage in Barbados per hour is $10.75 Barbados money, like $10.75 of Barbados dollars. If you convert $10.75 of Barbados dollars to American dollars, meaning the poorest of the poor person is making approximately $5.30-something American money. $5.30-something American money. Remember, they pay less tax here. You understand? They pay lesser bills here. So whether you believe it or not, somebody living in Barbados is making way more money than somebody living in America. So if you cannot have this, you have this. You get to the point now, if you cannot have this, you can have this. This can change your life forever. Only for business-oriented people, not regular people. You see, Barbados is not your mate, brother. Barbados is a younger brother of United States dollars. Like if you live in Barbados, you are living in a heavenly glorified version of America. You get to the point now. So I made a video comparing Barbados dollars.
What? Andre, I only listened to the beginning of this video. I can't believe. Anyway, it's your segment. Go right ahead.
So you see how Barbados is being promoted and how you can actually have an influx of persons coming here not for a holiday, but to find work and, basically get as much money as you want here in Barbados and send it back home. And what will this do for jobs in Barbados for locals? What would this do in order to protect locals in Barbados? We're not dealing tonight with what it would do in terms of the foreign exchange. That's a totally different story that we would need to look at some point as well. But you have it here that yes, for many persons coming from the areas where the exchange rate, their dollar to the US dollar is very high. When you come to Barbados and you earn a Barbados dollar, you are making a lot of money. And for that reason, that is why some of those people, migrant workers, when they travel here, what they're receiving as our minimum wage is actually like a pot of gold to them in their local currency. So therefore, they will work longer hours if need to. They would accept the harsh conditions if need to. And all of these things they will do, and it would eventually make it seem as though Barbadians do not want to work as hard as they are. But a dollar is a dollar in a man's country. When a Barbadian receives the minimum wage now, and he has to go to the supermarket, he's recognizing that that pay does not help. It does not stretch to buy groceries, to pay utilities, to pay bus fare, which for some people is almost $14 a day. And if you have a vehicle to put gas in your car, it does not stretch. But if you have a migrant worker who is living in a shared environment, and basically all they have to do is to pay for their accommodation and buy food, they really don't have to worry about a social life. They will cut and contract because they came to earn money to save to send back home. And there's also another thing that I would like to look at as well, because sometimes we don't think about these things. Now, Oftentimes you would hear persons saying, okay, when you get, I'm not calling any nationalities because I don't want to bias any nationality, but when you get a migrant worker, you can ask them to work overtime at short notice. At 4 o'clock in the evening, you can ask them to stay on till 8. They will gladly do that. But then they will compare the Barbadian worker, they don't want to do it. There are a number of reasons why the Barbadian worker might not be able to do it, and some employers don't seem to take these things into consideration. The Barbadian worker has their child to pick up from school or make sure that their child gets home safely. They have to go home and cook for that child. They have to go home and make sure the child does homework, take all of these things into consideration. Yes, they will probably like to stay and earn additional money, but in most cases, they don't earn overtime pay unless they would have worked more than 4 hours over the time, when they would probably then receive the overtime pay. But then when you have the migrant worker whose child is back home, in most cases, is back home being taken care of by a grandmother or the rest of the family, they have the luxury of time on their hands, because reality is they probably don't have anything else to do in the country, and they came to earn as much money as possible, so they will stay. But just because a Barbadian worker does not stay, it does not mean that this person is not productive and they're not willing to work. And these are things that we must take into consideration and not make it seem as though our Barbadian workers are not interested in the jobs. So one of the questions that we have to look at, are employers using migrant labor to address skill shortages or simply to reduce labor costs? That is one of the things that I've found, that as long as you can get a migrant worker who is willing to work for the basic minimum pay, you will not be giving the Barbadian worker who would expect a salary increase on an annual basis or expect more money to make ends meet. You will not be giving that person the job. So are we making our workforce better, or are we causing our local at the detriment of persons coming in? And then when you look at what has happened, the politics of the world, the US is closing their borders to migrant workers. Canada is, the UK is closing their borders to migrant workers. Many places are making it much harder for persons to actually get a visa to come in and work. So there are less opportunities available to Barbadians. Right now, I think that we would have to encourage our young Barbadians to seek a job overseas if they really want to have an opportunity to grow and develop themselves from their job. But these opportunities are not happening because they're being shortchanged in the labor market here in Barbados. So how can government protect local workers without discouraging investment? Now, you would hear the story, and I did raise this once in the Senate, about workers not being paid the same amount. And the technical argument was given that we have a labor department which will go on job sites and check these things, so that if the rate of pay at a particular job site is supposed to be X dollars and a complaint is made to the labor department, that the labor department in this country will go and check and rectify that matter. Marcia and to the rest of the followers on the show, how likely is that to happen in Barbados when you cannot even get the phone answered at the labor department in order to make a complaint? If you go in there, I'm certain that there are many Barbadians who have made legitimate complaints to the labor department in Barbados, and nothing has been heard of these complaints for over a year, and the same matter that they complain about persists and continue. So that does not happen. Also, I have not heard the unions in Barbados speaking out about these things either. And these are things that the union should champion, because we are part of the ILO, and you cannot expect to bring persons into Barbados to work and they are working under conditions that are not as favorable as Barbadians, or by their presence, they're making the workforce in Barbados unsatisfactory or for the average worker. And I think that all of these things would eventually lead to a further decay in productivity in the country, a further decay in the customer service in the country, because the reality is, if you are working in an environment and it does not seem as though the employer cares about you, you are working and you are still studying, how am I going to pay my bills? Obviously, you're coming to work with things on your mind, so you may not very well deliver the best customer service. And you may also find yourself in an environment where you may have to get more than one job in order to make ends meet. So it means that one of the jobs will probably suffer in terms of your energy level and your productivity. All of these are things that we need to guard against. Barbados has had a good reputation when the Productivity Council existed, which was one of the things formed out of Sandifer's structural adjustment program to form a productivity council to study the measures in which to enhance and improve productivity in Barbados. That has gone through the window. No, under this current administration, it no longer functions in the way it ought to be. You no longer hear of the National Initiative of Service Excellence, which is nice. And with all of the complaints of customer service in Barbados, try calling Flow Digicel to make a complaint about the poor service which you're getting. It takes forever, you don't get through. So obviously customer service is going through the Edos in Barbados. There has been a fall off in the standard and the quality of customer service in Barbados. And this would eventually trickle into the hotel sector, which we say is our own sole breadwinner as a country. And we cannot afford for these things to happen. Where is the training and the development being offered to our young people? Where are the opportunities being offered to our young people? It's one thing to give them access to courses online that they can do, but then after doing these courses and you still can't get a job or you still can't get the work experience, where does it put you? Because you still need access to a job, you still need access to the work experience as well to give yourself an opportunity. And I think that as a country, we need to do better. And instead of bringing migrant workers in at a time where countries are closing off their borders and looking out for their locals, we need to focus more on developing work opportunities for local persons.
Yes, I'm here just listening to you, and somebody said, "Listen, this information just flows out of Mr. Worrell." Somebody said that to me the last time that you were here. It is just flowing out of you. And there's a comment here that says, someone Lemuel Toll is saying, "Does the government recognize that all of the rich countries are restricting migration, even though their employers are suffering from shortages?" And it's what you've been saying, and I wonder what do you think is the end goal here for this government?
Well, the reality is, because if you go back to the citizenship bill that they're now trying to pass, you only have to live here for a few years or months, and then you're entitled to citizenship. And that citizenship means that you get a Barbados ID card and that you get to go on the electors list. Maybe that
Mm.
is the end result for the government. There's the second part of it too. Look at who financed the government. You're not hearing any complaints from the employers and the large companies that finance the government. And if the government can allow them to have access to a labor force, which they have to spend less on, they would at least think that it would help to improve their bottom line and improve their profits. So I guess that the government is again looking out for who financed them, and also at the back end looking out for how they can win the next election. Because if a government allows mass migration, right, the persons who come in will more than likely vote for the government that allowed them to come, or the party that allowed them to
Right.
come, because they wouldn't have an opportunity to know the lay of the land and the full situation. So maybe that is how it will help the government. I honestly think that we should not give away our citizenship. I think I read this week that St. Kitts and I think it was St. Lucia, that they're now required to have visas to enter Scotland because of their citizenship by investment program.
Mm-hmm.
Scotland is basically, no, Ireland, sorry, is basically doing the same thing that the UK did because of the openness of their borders. The UK did it recently in terms of this because of the citizenship by investment program. A number of countries which have that, they have put restrictions on accessibility by making them get visas. So
Right.
Ireland basically did the same thing because you can stop getting to Ireland and easily walk across the border into the UK or into Europe because of their openness of the border. So they basically did the same thing. If we continue with this citizenship program where for the sake of a person having enough money or having a job and being here for X amount of years, 3 years or so, that they can eventually go and qualify for a Barbados ID card and then a Barbados passport, we may very well find ourselves in a situation where that is seen, it devalues the
Yes.
Barbados passport, and then all of the countries where we currently don't require visas to enter, we may have to get visas to enter. And with countries such as the UK, making it harder, they're not stopping migrant workers from coming, but what they're saying is that if you have a job and the country is willing to sponsor you, then you can come in. So it's a more controlled process. But right now,
Yes.
we have no control in place. As many as land and then can cry out that I am suffering, and a Barbadian can then offer them a job, they will come. And then they would eventually flood our shores. And
Hmm.
as they do this, Barbadians are not getting the work. Then the next thing you have to look at housing, because migrant workers, 4 people sharing a 1 bedroom apartment. I saw an ad for a 1 bedroom apartment, $250 a week, I think it was. So that's $1,000 a month for a 1 bedroom apartment. So it means that the young couple that would like to move out and, start raising their family, they cannot afford the rent for to move out to have the space to raise their children because you're making it harder for them. We're not building housing in Barbados at the capacity of the people that we are bringing in. Like I said, the last time I was here, our healthcare system is not improving, and the World Bank had to come and tell us that our education system is also declining as well.
Correct.
But there may be something in that as well, because if the World Bank think that our education system is declining, they may be willing to offer us funding, another loan to improve on it. So
Correct.
sometimes you have to wonder if some of these things are not structurally done to let the bottom fall out of the system so that when we go a begging cap in hand, it will seem as though we have needs,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly.
Because it's ridiculous. Today I heard on Brass Stats a parent complaining that their child is in third going to fourth, and they gave the litany of the number of teachers who were not available and they did not have any substitute. And I
Mm.
know this situation happened um, has been constantly happening under this administration. They have not been hiring substitute teachers. They do not have the complement of teachers necessary for the school environment, but yet still there are persons out there who are capable of teaching who are not being offered a job. There are a number of persons who are trained in social work that would like an opportunity to be social workers or counselors in our school setting, and they're not being offered a job. Don't you think that that is what is needed now with our failing school system? You need more social workers in there, and you need more teachers to assist, so that instead of a class being 30 students, we need to probably look to bring it down to 20 so that it is more manageable and you make sure that the children are being properly educated. But no, we are focusing now on all of the wrong priorities at this
Correct.
time.
Correct. Dave, before you go, I think Dave has, I'm not sure if he has, okay, he has, okay, how long is it? I don't know how long, it's a short video that he has that he wants to share.
Fact 33. Barbados has a literacy rate above 99%, among the highest on Earth and the highest in the Western Hemisphere. There is no oil, no minerals, no rivers for hydroelectric power, no harvestable timber. When you strip away every conventional natural resource, the only thing left to develop is the person standing in front of you. Barbados built its education system not as a philosophical choice, but as a geographic one. Human capital was the only capital the island had. The 99% literacy rate is not a policy success story. It is the direct consequence of having nothing else.
Okay. Well, there
Yeah,
you go. The human resources.
very true. Very true. We need to develop our people and not token development, but it needs to be genuine. It needs to be real. And just to go back to this whole situation with the difficulty with young persons getting a job, I was recently shocked by a young person who was at that stage about to graduate from UE. And I had asked the person, well, just a long story short, the person said, I don't really fight to get an A because an A does not help you to get a job in Barbados, right?
Mm,
That is reality. And you may very well have a situation, our young people are underperforming in school because they recognize, look, my brother may have CXCs or my sister may have CXCs and still can't get a job. Why am I killing myself? So you see
mm-hmm.
how the cycle goes around, how the cycle develops, and we need to change that for our young people. We need to give every single young person an opportunity, and we need to push them and help them to realize, look, there's a value in education and there's a value in developing yourself. Don't send them on courses to train them in agriculture and then they cannot get the land, or when they get the land for agriculture they can't get the resources to make it work. Don't train them in construction then to say in plumbing. I read an ad on a construction site that the plumber needs to have X amount of years experience. Now tell me which plumber you would have found in the 1980s that did not learn plumbing by going on the site and working with the plumber with experience, and that is how they gain their experience. So why are you asking a young plumber who just graduated from community
Right.
college, from Polytechnic, sorry, that they must have at least 5 years experience? Where they can get it from? It means that you do not want to give them the opportunity to have that job. And our employers need to do better. Where is corporate social responsibility for our country? Who is looking out for the Barbadians? Who is looking out for the workers? Our unions need to do better. Where is their voice in this matter? And our government definitely is failing. Don't really expect much better from them.
You've touched on so many areas tonight, Mr. Worrell, and so many, so many. There actually, I heard a voice note, from someone in the diaspora, and I don't know if Dave is able to play that voice note. I only sent it to him this evening because I was rushing, and I didn't get to prepare so much for the show, and I sent it to him. But it's someone in the diaspora, and when she was just expressing her concerns about what she sees is happening in Barbados, and I think this issue of migration is coming to head. There is something about to happen, Mr. Worrell, because I'm hearing it from the people. I'm hearing it. They're calling me. There's a lot of concern, and we're watching what's happening at the BADMC. There's supposed to be a meeting tomorrow. Some of the people are reaching out to us, and we are waiting to see what is happening there. Because if all these people are told to come here to find jobs, why are you letting go these people here, or Bajan people? You know, so it's very interesting. But I would love to. Can I engage you for another 5 minutes? Is
Sure,
that
no
okay?
problem.
Because I started you a little late, so let me try and engage you for 5 minutes. Go ahead, Dave. Let's listen to. This is someone from the diaspora.
I just thought I would cut that off instead of leaving you one long message because I know you're really busy. I've been seeing the videos that Jason puts out. I've been seeing, and I mean Jason Phillip. He did one on the foul coop, right, that you spoke about just last week, you know, and I can hear the people in the background, you know, people are asking questions, you know, and you're asking the right questions, you know, and today I got up and I'm thinking about, first thing I thought about you. And while I was on my way down the street, some person say, you know, could I pray for you? And I said, well, no, but can you pray for my country? And I wrote Barbados's name down, right? Because we need prayer. But Marcia, I remember when first thing, people didn't have a lot of money, right? Barbados was really poor. And I mean, the citizens, they didn't have big houses, they didn't have anything, right? And people work hard, they go in the field and they work, right? I know this because my grandmother worked in the field and my mother worked in the field, and neither one of them were educated, you know. And when my grandmother would go, I would get up and I would go with her. You know, I didn't know what the heck I was doing, but I would help out, you know, and that's how they made their living. Barbadians now are richer. And I mean, they got more money now and all of that, but somewhere along the line, they've lost their voices. They've lost their ability to get up and to fight. And I don't know if that is a result of being more educated, because people say sometimes you become more educated, but you become less smart, right? Because now we get so bogged down in the system. And today I was wondering, you know, what are our politicians doing? So as Jason made his video and talked about St. Peter and what St. Peter didn't have, he says, we don't have a fire station and we don't have a hospital. He said, and these are the things that people need. I sat here and I thought about that. And I said, imagine if some person was having a heart attack or a stroke, you know, they would not be able to get to the hospital from St. Peter in 10 minutes, which is about the time that they need to make a difference, because not many people are schooled in CPR, right? They don't know what to do when there's an emergency. And now you got to wait for an ambulance to come from Bridgetown all the way to you, then to go all the way back. And that's lost time. You know what I mean? What are politicians doing, Marcia? And I'm asking that question because aren't politicians supposed to be representing their constituency? Aren't they supposed to be talking about their constituency? And here you have, after election, one man out there still fighting for the people, still on the ground like he is campaigning for his life. And meanwhile, you got the elected officials that I have never seen on the street of Barbados, never heard on the street of Barbados except when it's election. And I have never heard where they sit down in a cabinet meeting and fight for their constituency, which is what they're supposed to be doing. Isn't that what they're supposed to be doing? I'm asking you because, I mean, you've been the person out there and you kind of like, no, but isn't that what they're supposed to be doing?
You know,
And
okay, let her go ahead. How much longer is it, Dave? Is a question I was asking you. Can you write it in the chat? I can't hear.
as I continued my rant, right? We got to hold our politicians, and I mean single-handedly, you know, each person, the sum of its, or in this case, the part of its sum, right? We got to hold each person accountable, that they're accountable for their constituent, so that each constituency get the things that they need to build up the country. That is what they're supposed to be doing, right? But every day we got the pipe dreams. And the pipe dreams are, let's just have these bold, extremely bold goals that never comes into fruition, that becomes sound bites and sound good, but nothing ever happens, and so we have a Barbados right now that is smarter. The people make more money, but Barbados is poorer than when my mother was growing up and when I was growing up as a kid in that country. Barbados is poor. Children are more educated, but things are worse than they used to be. Jobs are going away. I just heard that C.O. Williams laying off workers. Are you kidding me? Aren't we importing people and giving them jobs? We should say there's a labor shortage, but C.O. Williams laying off people? Like, are you kidding me?
Mm-hmm.
Aren't they getting the bulk of the government contracts? Like, what is happening in Barbados? Hotels, you're building more hotels, but hotels are laying people off. Like, I don't get it. Right? And so somebody might not understand why I feel the way I do. I feel like Barbados is dying under this government. I feel like it's really dying. And we're watching, right? Without the power to do something except to talk and to get out there. Because the people who got money, they don't care. They like that. They like all the crime because then they come in and swoop it up for next to nothing and then turn it into the country that they want, where the poor just become servants in their own country. Right? This is what is happening under our noses, and people are just going along like just yesterday. They're going along like it's nothing. As long as I can put on something nice and come out and look like I'm important, they don't care. Anyway, this is my Saturday rant because those things are bothering me.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you so much. I listened to it and I thought I wanted the rest of Barbados to hear that. Any comments on that, Mr. Ward, before you go?
Well, even without hearing that conversation before, a lot of what she said are things that I would have mentioned in terms of our workplace, and it is very true. A lot of Barbadians are not crying out because for right now, as long as it has not come to their doorstep or into their household, it does not bother them. And many people think no one cares, so why make a fuss about it anyway? So you adopted this attitude that you deal with your situation yourself. No one helps you, so you deal with your situation yourself and let the other people do the same. But we must realize that collectively we will lose because it will eventually come to your doorstep. It will eventually come to your workplace. You think that people like C.O. Williams thought that they would have to be worrying about being laid off? The workers at Berger probably thought that they had jobs for another 10 years or so. Standard just gone. Just gone. If you look on Broad Street now,
Yeah.
Broad Street is a deplorable mess. Half of the stores in Broad Street are closed. When you pass through Mall 34, hardly any businesses operate in Mall 34. It just shows that you get a picture, it's almost like they bring you is a green screen or something like that, and they show you what they want you to see on that green screen. But when you take it down, the whole place is a mess. It is rotten. It is wood ants eaten. All of those things, and that is how our country has become. So really and truly, the central bank government needs to go on Broad Street and do a press conference in front of what used to be Harrison's, and I challenge the Prime Minister to do the same. Hold her next press conference in front of what used to be Harrison's and tell the world that Barbados is a booming place. It is not.
Actually, Andre, I was in town today and we went into Norman Center and oh my goodness, my heart dropped. I mean, there's so many empty stores. When last have you been into Norman Center, Andre?
I haven't been into Norman Center in a while, but passing through town because they normally would come through Mall 34 empty.
empty. What I'm serious. If you think it's no exaggeration, I'm telling you, I'm like, I didn't even know that you could look straight through that store and see all the way behind Cave Shepherd, because you're looking and seeing through the glass. The place is just empty. You could count on your one hand, literally one hand, how many stores are there. And that is what, when you walk on Broad Street, as you're saying itself, closed with homeless people sleeping. I'm like, what has this space become?
Exactly. Feces in the entryway of what used to be Harrison's. You imagine that?
Feces?
Shameful. Yes.
Oh my
Shameful.
Lord.
And this is what Barbados has become. This is what Broad Street, our flagship, our front street, what it has become. So what really are we doing?
It is a sad, as I walked with somebody else, another Bajan today, she said it's just so sad to see Bridgetown this way and to see Broad Street this way. We were walking, and then when we went in Norman Center, I'm like, oh, and then I started to get worried that the place we were going to was closed, but it was actually upstairs. I mean, but it just looks like a ghost town. And I think the plan is that they're probably going to, all those businesses are going to leave, and they're going to, I was told they're going to build it up and put something else there. I don't know what's happening, but anybody out there been to Norman Center? Wow, I tell you. But Mr. Worrell, thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Very, very, a lot of introspection, I should say.
All right. Thank you, Marcia. Thank you for having me, and looking forward to the rest of the show.
Yes, God bless you. Thank you so much.